He said, I have prayed for you that your faith faileth not. He said, when thou art recovered, strengthen thy brethren. The word had to add priesthood in order to save Peter. In the garden of Gethsemane, bastard, the seal of God will not be on it. You notice in Genesis chapter 4, the Bible said Cain left the presence of God and he pioneered the whole civilization that God knew nothing about. That kind of civilization is a bastard. It doesn't have the signature of God on it. But the moment Enosh was born and men began to call upon the name of the Lord, the will of God, the purpose of God, the agenda of God began to find expression again. So 3 things that defines the essence of our existence is to become custodians and reflectors of the glory of God. Number 2, to become propagators and perpetuators of the will of God. And number 3 is to become men of intimacy, dogged intimacy, seeking the presence of God and living there all the days of our lives. When a man gets to that point, he becomes a man truly fulfilling the purpose for his existence. Having explained this basic foundation, tonight I want to teach on a very sensitive subject. People reached out to me, and they've been reaching out to me for a long time, and they said, we want you to teach on this subject. And I said, it's a sensitive subject. Because I'm a traveler, it's difficult for me to sit down and begin to do teachings on very sensitive subjects. Why is that so? There are certain subjects you cannot exhaust unless as you have the time to do a series. And then you are talking to the same people so you can build along certain lines of revelation. But if you are in Enugu on Monday, on Wednesday you are in Sokoto, and on Friday you are in Abuja, then it will be difficult to sit down and address any sensitive subject. That's why I try to avoid them. But once and again, when I mention this subject, it gets the attention of many people, and they begin to ask questions, send in messages, pleading that we should do a teaching so that they can know the position of God on the matter. And so tonight, I made up my mind I was going to begin a series to deal with this very sensitive subject, even as we begin tonight. And it's the subject of marriage. My God. It's a very sensitive subject. Very sensitive subject. But it's also important that we consider it. Praise God. But before I begin, I will leave some disclaimers. You know, the Bible said in 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 19, it said the standard of the Lord, the foundation of the Lord, standeth sure. You can't blur that ground. You can't blur God's foundation. You can't blur God's standard. It said the foundation of the Lord standeth sure. It said having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. And let every man that nameth the name of the Lord depart from iniquity. It said, but in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor and some to dishonor. It said, if a man therefore purges himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. Sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good works. So the standard of God is what helps God to know them that are his. There are many who are calling on the name of the Lord, but they are not God's. They don't belong to God. The only way God can separate a people and say, these ones are mine, is when his standards defines their existence. Separation is not just staying in a room and praying. I was teaching somewhere last week, and I told them there are 4 biblical credentials that defines a separated man. And you will find that in Romans chapter 8 from verse 29 to 30. The Bible said the first thing that defines separation is predestination. Those who are set apart before the foundation of the world. Not necessarily because God is biased and chose some people, but because God, being omniscient, knows those that will accept his standard and live accordingly. So there is a preparation for them. That's the concept of predestination. And then after predestination, you have calling. He said, to them whom he predestinated, them he called. Now when God calls a man, he's got to accept that calling. And the calling of God is through the finished works of Christ. This is not a calling into the fivefold. This is the calling into the family of God. And so the moment you believe Christ in your heart and confess him with your mouth, you are saved. You become part of the righteous, those who are separated to stand according to God's standard. And then after the calling, you have the justification. The moment you accept Christ, he declares you not guilty and he exonerates you from the messianic judgment. And then after justification, you now have glorification. But between justification and glorification, you have sanctification and obedience. Because glorification is not just a gift, it's also a reward system in Zion. When we get to Zion, we will reflect different measures of glory. The glory will be based on the quality of life and service we render to God while we walked on the face of the earth. So that's what defines separation. And all of that